Hello everyone, welcome to the EPG Pathshala. I am Asha Banu, a faculty with the Center for Health and Mental Health School of Social Work, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Right now, we are going to look at the module Mental Health Concern Across Lifespan with specific reference to children and adolescents. The course objectives would be to understand the significance of child and adolescent mental health, to understand the various determinants influencing mental health of children and adolescents, to understand the risk protective factor and resilience and its relationship to children and adolescent mental health. According to Article 24 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, health is the basis of a good quality of life, and mental health is of overriding importance in this. So it's necessary to invest in children and adolescent mental health. This module will take you through to understand what are the determinants in current context, and as mental health practitioners and social workers, what are the interventions that we can evolve in certain contexts to promote mental health and well-being of children. Significance of child and adolescent mental health. World Health Organization fact file estimates globally around 20% of children and adolescents have mental health problem, and about half of the mental health disorders start from the age of below 14. Report emphasizes that suicide is the second leading cause of death in the age group of 15 to 29. Mental health disorders and substance abuse are one of the main causes of disability worldwide among this particular age group. Natural calamities, disasters, riots, domestic violence, physical and mental abuse, poverty, broken family have significant impact on the child and adolescent mental health, which are often found in the low and middle income countries, including India. So this slide emphasizes stating the statistics of children and adolescents between this particular age group and their vulnerability because of varied reasons. It's important for mental health practitioners to focus on the early phase of the lifespan development. According to the recent report by Indian Council of Medical Research, revealed that 12% of children between 4 to 16 years suffering from psychiatric disorders. Adding to this, World Health Organization report highlights highest percentage of adolescents age group below 19 have the least mental health resources and services, getting at the low and middle income countries. Because of the taboo associated with mental distress and illness, and because of the misconceptions about mental illness and behavioral problems, parents do not access healthcare services. Misunderstanding, discrimination and stigma attached to mental disorder with children and adolescents need highest concern. These age group are the least capable of advocating for themselves. The stigma and discrimination includes bias, stereotyping, embarrassment, anger and rejection or avoidance. This may cause serious emergencies in the development of children and adolescents and even during their later lifespan. Now let's look what are the determinants and influences of child and adolescent mental health. As in all, as of all the social problems, everything boils down to poverty. Here also, it's the economic influences plays the major role. The State of the World's Children report estimated that there are 1 billion children worldwide living in poverty, with some regions having a higher incidence than others. Children living in difficult context and living in poverty are highly vulnerable to mental health concerns because of their lack of access to amenities and basic facilities, including the basic needs in the hierarchy of needs in terms of water, food and shelter. Education is one other major determinant. While informal education in family and community contexts promote mental health, it is widely recognized that lack of participation in formal education is associated with a whole range of poorer outcomes, including poorer mental health. So, one hand we always talk about the informal knowledge being passed from one generation to the other, but there is also evidence which indicates the formal education becomes a key indicator to better mental health. So these two are really interrelated, the economic influence and education. And if I have to put it together, how poverty influences multiple facets. Because of poverty, children will suffer malnutrition. Because of malnutrition, there is abnormal, not abnormal, but then definitely there is going to be a, a lesser functioning of their cognition. And poverty results in child labor. Child labor results in low self-esteem and problems related to self-identity and self-concept. Poverty and living in vulnerable contexts leads to sexual abuse of children. We have seen how child sexual abuse is on the rise, and how documents have indicated street children are going through sexual abuse. The incidences are going up, and then also poverty results in school dropout. We see, we have seen number of reports from both rural and urban contexts, how by the age of 12 or 13 children are forced to drop out of schools because of responsibilities at home, or because they have to start earning earning for sustaining their families. The next key determinant is social and family structure, which is very significant for mental health. And we also have seen Bowlby's attachment theory, which supports this. In the earlier phase, children require that nurturing and safe environment for a better mental health then and later. So social and family structures change for varied reasons. Children have lost their parents for wars, riots, disasters, or where parents have been living separately because of marital discard. Considering all of this, the resilience literature shows many children do maintain positive health in difficult family circumstances, in part because protective factors can be identified. While we are still discussing about the determinants, and we'll continue to discuss the determinants, I have put this interlude to talk about children in difficult contexts where the risk factors are high. It is important for social work practitioners to evolve protective factors to balance the risk factors. And literature has shown definitely children can maintain positive health if protective factors and protective mechanisms are put in place. The next important construct or determinant we can discuss is gender. Different patterns of socialization for boys and girls can impact on various indicators of mental health, such as self-esteem, identity, resilience, and empowerment. And in the Indian context, we can say how really gender plays a crucial role. If we take the statistics, the number of children who are dropping out of the school in their high school or after 9th or 10th standard, it would be majority of the girls. We have a field action project very closer, which is in Shapur Taluk. In the schools, we can see that girls who are in the 9th and the 10th drop out in greater numbers, and when you look at the higher secondary, there will be only boys. The co-ed school will look like it's a boys higher secondary school. The girls drop out for varied reasons. One, because of the cultural context, parents want them to get married early, or it might be because there is no protection in school in terms of safe toilets, drinking water, or to maintain hygiene and sanitation. Students drop out, or oftentimes it is cited in literature where the girl children have to really take care of their younger siblings, because of which they have to be they have to stop going to school. So in terms of gender, we can see, and these different patterns of socialization definitely puts girl to a greater mental health vulnerability. Then the next determinant, which is not everywhere, it is violence, conflicts, and disasters. And this also has a greater impact, and this also sometimes have a gender differential. The other significant determinant which I have to talk in detail is physical environmental influences. There was a smaller video which became popular in the social networking sites, where a small girl is trying to follow the father to see whether the father is safe in the field or he is going to commit suicide. It was a promotion campaign to make everyone understand the difficulties the farmers go through, and we can clearly see the plight of the girl child who is feeling very insecure and following the father everywhere. So physical environment influences also puts younger children into greater vulnerability. One, because the family is in utmost poverty. Two, increasing farmer suicide makes the child more vulnerable. That is one example. And in terms of droughts, the child is expected to walk kilometers to fetch water. I have enough, photographs to say, and narratives to say how the girl child suffers a lot in summers by supporting the mother by fetching water. So the physical environmental influences also definitely influence the mental health of children, and particularly girl child, because water and women are all the time connected. While the boys have the adequate time to focus and channelize their energies in school and studies or doing diploma programs or even engaging in play, you see the girl child taking care of the responsibilities of the household and doing the adult jobs of the family, which restricts the child from the right to play and being on her own. The next determinant is parentification and other responsibilities. Parentification is a concept which came when, in the context of HIV/AIDS, where children have started taking the roles of parents, where there was a high role reversal. Imagining a 10-year-old taking decisions in terms of what to do with the finances, taking decision in terms of what to do with the mother who is on the bed, at the same time engaging in workforce, drawing money for the family and decision making, etc. It's too much for the child to take care of. So that also is an important determinant for the mental health concern. And there are multiple other factors in terms of the positioning of the child in the family, the parent relationship, or some other individual factors in terms of whether the child has a disability or etc. etc. Those are the individual factors that also can affect the mental well-being of the child. So in a nutshell, if I have to put it, the determinants operate at differing levels. Individual factors, family, the family context also shapes the mental health of the child, and the community in which the family belongs to, and the larger societal. So if you look at individual, where the child belongs to, the family context, the community with which the family is located, and the societal resources that the family could garner for themselves is very important. And determinants interact in such a way as to enhance or to reduce mental health. So these determinants interact. Either it can enhance or it can work reversely on the mental health of the children. So the mental health concerns. Mental health difficulties are defined as any cognitive, emotional, or behavioral issues that may cause distress or concern in children's or adolescents' life. It may affect how the children think, feel, or behave. This is often happening in their normal life, whereas mental health disorder refers it as a condition in which children and adolescents experience severe and negative impact on their capacities to perform at home, school, and other related situations. In one of the earlier modules, it was discussed how mental health and mental illness should be viewed as a continuum. So most of the children, because of the complexities, definitely go through a mental health difficulty, and which is quite normal, and because of their individual factors or family factors, or because of whatever challenges they face in the community. But when we are enhancing the protective factors, there is a greater possibility that the child will grow with a positive mental health. But unfortunately, there are certain children who would move in terms of developing a mental health disorder, which would require a psychiatric clinical help. Some of the common mental health disorders found in children and adolescents are anxiety-related disorders, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, bipolar, conduct disorder, depression, eating disorders, obsessive and compulsive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now let's look in terms of risk, protective factors, and resilience in children and adolescents. Protective factors can be defined as any biological, that is the individual factors. It can be my own immunity, my capacity, etc. Psychological, contextual, that is the social characteristics that reduce the negative impact of a risk factor or problem outcome. For example, a child or adolescent with high self-esteem or optimistic outlook may be able to recover from a difficult situation. So when we look in terms of working with children, there are set of risk factors, but there are also set of protective factors. So, like children in orphanages, not having parents definitely is a risk factor, but at the same time, in terms of creating an environment where the adult care, concern, and nurturing is provided for the child, that becomes a protective factor. Risk factor defined as biological, psychological, contextual characteristics that precedes and associated with higher likelihood of problem outcome. For example, peer rejection or bullying may cause severe behavioral disorder. Now, resilience. Resilience is the ability to challenge the adversity and build up the courage to face difficulties in life. The presence of risk and protective factors in the child's everyday life is determining the resilience capacity of the child. So while we are working with children, it is really essential to see how to balance. Everyone would be vulnerable to risk factors, but how we can choose certain contexts to promote protective factors and work towards building resilience in a child is critical. Now, prevention and promotion in child and adolescent mental health. As we have understood, not all children are free of distress. Everyone is going through risk irrespective of the class and the context they belong to. And not all the child is going to school to have school as a context, because most often when we talk about child and adolescent mental health, immediately the next intervention that comes to mind is school mental health interventions. The school mental health interventions are so important, but not all the children are located in schools. So we have to be really creative and innovative in evolving interventions in diverse contexts for promoting children and adolescent mental health. Mental health promotion is any action taken to maximize health and well-being among populations and individuals. And prevention of mental health difficulties refer to interventions that occur before the initial onset of a disorder to prevent its development. Early intervention comprises interventions that are appropriate for and specifically target people displaying the early signs and symptoms of a mental health problem or mental disorder. For each of it, I want to give example. When I was preparing for the class, I went through a module by a faculty from NIMHANS, which talks about mental health promotion amongst adolescent girls. Taking gender as a determinant, that particular module is focusing on mental health promotion of adolescents. The module's name is Mental Health of Girls Growing Up. In short form, the acronym is MOGU. So it is important for people who are working on or specifically with concerns of adolescents, it's important to go through this particular work by a faculty in NIMHANS. So that is basically focusing on mental health promotion. It is basically focusing on maximizing health and well-being of the larger adolescent population. The prevention of mental health difficulties refer to intervention that occur before the initial onset. So basically here there is an identification that might be this population is vulnerable. The example I would want to cite is our own field action project, which is working with children and adolescents who are visiting the family court for the counseling process when their parents are going through divorce. It's a very difficult scenario where the children is expecting to choose between the parents, as well as they go through emotional turbulence around that particular period. So there is a setting by our field action project, where they focus on creating protective mechanisms for children who are going through the crisis of parents splitting because of a legal process. Early intervention comprises interventions that are appropriate for and specifically target people displaying the early signs and symptoms. This would be when you're doing a universal approach or you're doing a prevention, definitely we would see people who are really in need of a mental health support, and that early referral can happen rather than wasting time and they become really symptomatic or they are losing out many productive days of their life. It is easier to do early referral, and the family is aware of how to handle the stress and the crisis with the child. While we spoke about these three levels of prevention, promotion, and early intervention, it is important to recognize the role of family and involvement of caregivers in the entire process. And the family is an important asset in promoting protective factors for children and adolescents. Now, there are a number of programs that we're focusing on family. There are also programs that's focusing particularly on children and creating a social capital. For example, we have seen Magic Bus working with children on a holistic development in Mumbai, where they use sports as a medium and work with the adolescents. There are certain organizations where they work with family and caregivers of children and adolescents. But if you look at whatever approach, they are somewhere focusing on promoting the protective factors. The next popular program which is cited or there is funding through the district mental health program is the school mental health program, and there are smaller initiatives by different schools. Recruitment of counselors is considered as promoting mental health program within the schools, and there are also large scale programs and international models are available. For example, there is a particular program called Kids Matter because there is a greater emphasis by the Australian government to focus on mental health promotion and with the lifespan approach. And there is a program called Kids Matter which operates in school, but operates in school with 4 different components where they are working on the individual self of the child, where they focus on parents, and they are building a resilient community, school community for the child to grow and evolve. And they also have early intervention where if any child is identified with having difficulties and problems would be referred for early intervention. So there are different international models as well as national models that focus on creating innovative models within schools. Even here there was a private school which demonstrated a effective model to reach out to all the student population in the school. They have even evolved a manual highlighting the concerns which are very common amongst adolescents in their particular school. If we have to focus on child and adolescent mental health, it is also important to have effective parenting programs. Now, while we are talking about the mental health programs, we also have to see and see the different programs and how we can do like there is no separate mental health policy for adolescent and children, but then is there anything that we can do, because the determinants when we discussed it's so vast and there is a broad range of determinants. Can we do any intersectoral work by pulling in positive elements and threats from different policies? Here there are certain policies that are listed: National Policy for Children 1974, National Policy on Education 1986, National Nutrition Policy, National Health Policy, National Charter for Children, National Plan of Action for Children. So there is no dearth of policies, but then how to pull different components from this and promote the mental well-being of the child in different contexts. To conclude the session, I also also would want to talk about the mental health legislations concerned with the right of mentally ill, the quality of care, the use of administrative and budget control measures, consumer participation, and involvement in the organization and management of mental health care and services. In India, there are few legislations which encompass aspect of mental health. Some of them are Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Act 1985. I'm citing this as the first because addiction is really increasing and smoking is on the rise, and it's definitely a huge mental health concern. And Mental Health Act, now there is the new mental health care bill which has been passed in the Rajya Sabha. Rehabilitation Council of India Act 1992, Person with Disabilities, Equal Opportunities and Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995, which would be very important to draw from there. Then Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act. In fact, often I wonder, Care and Protection Act and the shelter homes. But then when students are placed there for fieldwork, they come back and say there is nothing like mental health within such spaces. So it's important for us to invest in such spaces to promote mental well-being. We have spaces, we have structures in place, but then integrating mental health within these spaces to promote child and adolescent mental health is critical. There are organizations which are doing that also. There is an organization called Shanved which is working in all these shelter spaces using dance movement therapy to promote well-being or to work on the trauma suffered by the children. But then we have to come up with a framework to work in all the spaces, which is coming under the Juvenile Justice Act 2000, promoting resilience of children and going out as responsible young adults to the larger society. Next comes the National Trust for Welfare of Persons with Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardation and Multiple Disabilities Act 1999 and Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. So, child and adolescent mental health implications for policy. India is a country with more than 400 billion children below the age of 18 years, which comes around 40% of the total population, which means approximately 19% of the world's children are living in India. Children in India are confronting multifaceted problems from birth to the young adulthood, and it's getting extremely challenging day by day for the children, across sectors. A vast majority of children and adolescents in India lack basic amenities of education, health, and are susceptible to adverse circumstances. In addition, in many cases, the familial influence and life events like parental divorce, crisis, bereavement, disability, and so on significantly affect the mental health of child and the adolescent. These adverse events assume etiological importance, in particular socio-cultural context. Also, poor mental health and development concerns like lower educational achievements, substance abuse, and violence amongst younger people are strongly correlated. In order to summarize, I would say the age period of children and adolescents are birth to the age of 18 years. There are a number of physical, biological, psychological, cognitive, and linguistic development that happens during this phase. The childhood and adolescent phase is critical in determining the mental health of a person across the whole lifespan. And thus, it is really important to focus on children and adolescents. The definition of child and adolescent mental health is the capacity to achieve and maintain optimal psychological functioning and well-being. For this purpose, we need to have an ecological model and promote protective mechanisms, understanding the risk, and you have to promote the resilience amongst children and for a healthy future of the children and adolescents as well as for the larger society. Thank you.